Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Marcela. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. Yes, it's hot out there,
It
so
is.
keeping cool. What about you?
Yeah, I've been doing really well. Really enjoying the summer. We have actually not taken our personal vacation yet, but we're going to be doing that at the beginning of August, and I'm so ready. I need the beach. We are so far from the beach, so I need a good beach vacation.
Where are you going?
We're going to go to Destin, Florida.
Oh, okay, fun. For today's episode, we are going to go through our Q&A section from our TikTok accounts that we get hundreds of questions. And we're going to go through some of them and answer them here on our podcast.
Yeah.
All these questions are from parents like you who want to raise their children respectfully and have questions, need answers. So this podcast episode is going to be a mix of many things. And I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I love Q&A with parents is actually one of my favorite things to do. So I'm really excited that we're doing it here, and we're going to try to, tell which profile asked this question, so you'll be able to know if it was your question or not. So before we jump into that, though, we want to make sure to tell you guys about a freebie that we have linked in the description of this video. It is the Parenting Avatar Questionnaire, or what would you call that?
After coaching so many parents, hundreds of parents, all of them trying to do the respectful, gentle parenting, I found 3 profiles or 3 types of gentle parents. And these 3 profiles of gentle parents, they have their unique strengths and needs. In this quiz, you're going to find out what your parenting avatar is. So you find what your strengths and needs are. And talking about the strengths is going to point you out to solutions in order for you to keep improving and becoming the parent that you want to be. So if you want to take this free quiz, it's very easy. Just open the description of this episode and the link is there. Or you can even go to the link in my bio at High Impact Club on Instagram and TikTok, and it's there as well.
Okay, are you ready to dive into some questions?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a really good question. This comes from Katie. Her handle is Howdy, This Is My Life on TikTok. And she says, what does discipline look like in your house or in your parenting method? I know you don't do timeouts, so I'm curious. So for me personally, discipline looks like meeting my child in a moment of whatever emotion she is showing me and working through a 5-step method that I actually turned into an ebook. It is called the Considerate Conversation Formula. And it's a formula that I started using myself after getting all of the knowledge that I could about parenting with understanding and all the knowledge that I could about gentle parenting and all of the knowledge that I could get all in one place. But I still needed something to help me in the moment. I needed a communication flow. And that's what this is. So I needed a communication flow, and that's essentially what this is. And it really is identifying the root of what's going on behind her big emotions and her big behavior, meeting that need, and then working on addressing and correcting her behavior. Little side note, correcting behavior and stopping behavior are 2 very different things. And a lot of parents get caught in this power struggle flow in discipline because they are only stopping behavior temporarily with punishments like yelling, spanking, timeouts, taking things away, all of that kind of stuff. And what I have found is that I rarely have to enforce consequences with my daughter because I found that this 5-step method really helps her to feel understood, feel seen, feel valued. And then whenever we talk about her behavior and I give her correction steps to fix that herself in the future, and it's not coming from a place of judgment, she self-corrects over time. It's not immediately, it's not a quick fix, but it definitely has happened. And now there are so many situations, so many scenarios where she, instead of throwing things at me like she used to get my attention, she'll come up and gently touch me and say, Mommy, I need your attention. Can you put your phone away? And she's 3.5, like that's more emotional maturity than a lot of adults have. My husband's not going to throw anything at me, but he can, for sure, we can get kind of like huffy and puffy because a lot of us weren't taught these things. So yeah, discipline in my house and in my parenting method really comes through the lens of seeing, valuing, and understanding the child and realizing that they are trying to communicate with me through their behavior.
I have one from, I think she's the mom of a teen. Her name is Lupe. What if I keep teaching my teen and the same behavior keeps happening? For example, he constantly is telling me to shut up. Oh, how would you feel if you have a twin or teen? How would you feel if your twin or teen constantly tells you to shut up? How would you feel? And I'm asking you about how do you feel, because based on the feelings that produces, many times is going to determine your reaction, right? And feelings come from thoughts. It comes from unmet needs. So if you get the shut up and then you grew up with like, for sure, this is disrespect and needs to be nipped in the butt right away, otherwise it's going to get worse, then your response is going to be a reaction, right? And then the shut up is going to escalate. Every behavior communicates a need. So if your teenager is telling you to shut up, that's his immature way of telling you that he might need space, that you might be teaching him too much. And I'm saying this because we may think like, oh, we have a teenager, they're not an adult, but that means we still need to keep teaching them and teaching them and teaching them. And for them, that sounds more like nagging because they already got the teaching a long time ago. But you think that, because they don't follow through, they need to keep being taught. When in reality, it's more like going to have a conversation with them and saying, okay, so we already went over this. We already went over the room needs to be cleaned. And I don't want to sound like nagging. What is preventing you from keeping the room clean? And how can I help you move forward? Is it that you let things piled up, and then you feel very overwhelmed with all the things that you need to clean? Is it about the time, the day that we have set up for cleaning? What is it? And from there, helping them. So when it comes to the shut up, is basically giving them the skills, the tools for them to communicate their needs without using disrespectful words, right? If shut up sounds really harsh to you, and if they need space, if they need you to not teach them so much, but to trust them, how can they communicate that to you? Right now, they're telling you to shut up. That's the only tool they have to communicate that need. But how else can they communicate it and talk to them about it?
Yeah.
That's parenting with understanding as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to about, being a teenager and the ways that I wish someone would have talked to me or sought to understand, because I had a really hard time keeping my room clean too. And it's something that I still struggle with in adulthood. And I have realized that executive functioning is just a struggle for me. And if someone had sought to understand that and given me the tools that I'm now learning in adulthood, back then, it would have been a game changer for me, and it would have saved me a lot of arguments in marriage too, because I married someone who's excellent at executive functioning and, ironically. So,
and I think that's why we're friends. We're so similar anyway.
I agree. Okay. So I have one from Kaylee. She says, my 4-year-old gets so mad or so upset that he throws stuff. He knows he did bad after and runs for a hug, but he continues to do it. Okay, so a couple of things that I see here. First of all, he's repeating the same behavior, and that tells me that it's probably being stopped in the moment, because when you stop behavior, it stops temporarily, but it isn't corrected long term. The second thing that I see is the words, he knows he did bad after. So my question to you, Kaylee, and to parents who are in the same boat would be, how can you reframe your mindset around behaviors that are maybe unhealthy? If we view behavior as communication, then communication can be unhealthy or healthy communication, but communicating with people isn't bad. There are just ways that we communicate that are not as healthy as others, right? So if he's throwing something, he's communicating something in that moment. And all behavior is communicating a need at the root. And the need is not to like throw his milk, for example. The need is not, that's not the root need. He may have a need in that moment for connection with you. And he's trying to draw attention to the fact that he just needs some mommy time. Or he could be throwing things because he has a need for safety. He doesn't feel safe in the moment. And so his body feels really anxious. And so he just throws things because he doesn't feel safe. So identifying those things and really trying to peel back the layers of what's going on and seeking to understand the child changes everything. And with him being 4 years old, you can probably have a conversation and say, get down on his level and say, oh, buddy, okay, I can see that you're throwing things. Can you tell me what you need right now? And if he melts into you for a hug, it was probably that he needed some mommy time and he needed some connection and he just wanted to feel close. And he knew that that was a sure way that he was going to get that attention from you. So in meeting that need for him, you can tell him, oh, I love giving you hugs. Next time you need a hug, instead of throwing your things, come to me and say, Mommy, I need a hug. You know, something that simple could be a total game changer.
Mm-hmm. I have a follow-up question to that, and that's just from how I see people respond when I say something similar. Oh, so if he needed mommy time and then he did it right after the throwing, that's what he's learning, that when he throws, mommy opens her arms for a hug. Mm-hmm. So how would not that reinforce the behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think that teaching them how to get what they need without doing the negative behaviors, you know, or communicating in those unhealthy ways, that's when you actually start to correct behavior, you know?
Yes. This one is from Max. I tried gentle parenting for a very long time. And if I'm not tough on my kids, they never listen. I've tried gentle parenting for a very long time. So are you talking to me about that you've tried it for 18 years? Or what a very long time means to you? A week? 2 months? I said from experience. Not so much with my twins, because I've been doing gentle parenting since birth. So that's all they know. That's all they're used to. But I'm talking about my children in foster care. When they came to me, they were in their teens and they had years and years being used to be parented with traditional methods. So they were used to not listen until they saw yelling from their parents or other foster parents. They were used to being threatened. So they come with habits, right? The habit of like discipline means I'm going to get yelled at, hurt, I'm going to get threatened, right? So when they come to me and then they see that there is another way, that I don't yell, that I don't threaten them to do things, it's a big, I would say, cultural shock for them, because they're thrown off. They don't know what it is. And it takes them, many times it takes them months. And there was one of them that it took him 2 years to finally understand that he was safe. Mm. And that I wasn't going to any given time explode, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for am I still safe with you? I mean, I know you're not yelling, I know you're trying, but am I still safe with you? So they're not pushing to test you. They're pushing to know if they're really now safe with you.
Yeah.
So when you say that if I'm not tough with them, they don't listen, that's the bar that you're setting in your house. That you are gentle, 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 gentle until you're tough.
Yeah, and I would be curious to know too what gentle looks like,
Mhm.
if it has slipped over into permissiveness, where you're, just trying to say the same controlling statements, but with a nice tone, like, please don't stand on the table, or please go clean your room, or, like just adding the word please and packaging the same, like, it's really like, I call it a posture. Like, it's this posture that we saw in our childhood. And so subconsciously, we think that that's how we should approach parenting. And really, parenting with understanding and gentle parenting, when it's done, what I would say, I mean, I hate like correctly and incorrectly, but like, to make gentle parenting work, you truly have to take on this posture of understanding and compassion, and putting yourself in the child's shoes and trying to see things through their lens and see things from their developmental level as well, knowing what is developmentally appropriate for them. And so I would be curious to this parent, looking at the ways that you have gently parented. If it wasn't quote unquote working, did you have realistic expectations for your child based on their developmental level? And were you slipping over into permissiveness, or had you learned how to gain cooperation without using fear, manipulation, and control? Because if not, that may be why it wasn't working. But the good news about all of that is that there are tools. There are still tools available for you. We have a ton of resources.
Another thing is that it says that if I'm not tough, they never listen. And that was what she or what he meant by not working. And I remember I heard a TikTok from a gentle parenting creator. It was a really great TikTok. And then she said, "What do you mean by not working?" Because for me, gentle parenting is not dependent on the child's behavior.
Mhm.
My 2-year-old still throws a fit if I tell her no. It's about my behavior and how I approach
Yes.
that feeling and that reaction.
Yes, 100% yes. That's an amazing way to put it. Okay, I have a question here from Jenna, and she says, can you talk about how difficult it is to be gentle when you grew up with reactive parents?
Mm.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So both Marcela and I did grow up with reactive parents. I think our parents reacted in different ways. Mine, I had a really interesting dynamic in my household where my mom had a lot of the attributes of a gentle parent in many ways. Like, she had a secure attachment with me, but she also had all these other attachment styles. If you're familiar with attachment styles, she had all the others kind of mixed in there as well. My dad, on the other hand, did not have a very secure attachment with me. And he was very, very reactive. So was my mom, but my mom reacted in like annoyance or frustration. My dad acted in anger and rage, which was way more scary for me. The frustration and annoyance from my mom was like, oh, mom's annoyed. But when dad got angry or filled with rage with me, it was really, really scary for me. And it created a lot of wounds. And by the way, I have talked with my dad about all of this, and we have a really good relationship now. And he totally sees things differently. He was young whenever I was born. He was about 25, and he just, had a lot of his own stuff going on. And so his reactivity came from just a lot of things that had happened in his own life, and a lot of things and stressors that he was dealing with at that age as well. So I understand. It doesn't negate the fact, though, that I was traumatized by that. And that feels really hard to admit. But when you then move into a position of being a gentle parent, when you were raised like that, It is so difficult. And I just want, Jenna, I want you to hear this. And I want any other parent that's listening to this episode that is just feeling the weight of, man, I have all these reactions coming out of me and I absolutely hate it. I hate when I yell. I hate myself when I yell. I just want to encourage you to give yourself so much grace, because you are not failing. When you react the way that your parents reacted, you are not failing as a parent. You're learning, you're growing, you're changing, and you're becoming, you actually care to become someone different. Whereas for many of us, our parents, it took them a long time. Like my parents are now breaking the cycle with me, and it's beautiful. They might think that you're absolutely crazy for wanting to break the cycle. And that can be really difficult for you as well. But one thing that I want to tell you that my therapist told me was that I was beating myself up whenever I would react in ways that my dad specifically reacted. If I reacted with anger or rage, and I had a moment where I lost all logic and reasoning and I did something, I yelled at my daughter or I popped my daughter, I would feel so guilty because I would tell myself, Rachel, you are a parenting coach. You know better. It's not that you should, you already do know better. And I told my therapist, I don't want to make her feel the way that I felt. And she said
Does
to
she
me,
know you're a parenting coach?
yeah, she does. Yeah. Yeah. And she said, oh, hold on. She said, you have a totally different foundation because you have a secure attachment. And so when you react, your daughter is just thinking, oh man, mommy's like really frustrated, or this is not how mommy usually reacts. Like, this isn't a pattern. This is really weird. What is happening? But for me, it was the normal. Like whenever I was a child, I didn't have that secure attachment and it was normal. So it was far more damaging. And for my daughter, there's also a repair process in place where I immediately move into, whoa, hold on a second. You did not deserve that. That was not my response, was not okay. Mommy should not have acted that way. And I'm so sorry that I did. I'm working on myself and I'm going to do better in the future. Whenever I'm angry, I'm going to do push-ups. Whenever I'm angry, I'm going to jump up and down. Whenever I'm angry, I'm going to like punch the air or, like do a dance party or do something to get that out of my body. But I'm not going to put my hands on you, and I am not going to use my voice to be aggressive towards you. And that is breaking the cycle. So to you, Jenna, and any other parent that is feeling this weight of like, I'm struggling because I feel like I was raised with reactive parents and I see that coming out of me. I'm trying to gently parent. The overall message here is just give yourself so much grace in this process and know that you have already laid a different foundation for your children than your parents did with you. And that is breaking the cycle.
Okay, so this one is from Dana. Very simple. How can I generate more patience? How can I generate more patience? Okay, so I want to do an analogy here. Why are we patient with our children's physiological or physical development? When our babies are now walking, when they're just laying down, and eventually they roll over, and eventually they start crawling, and then they stand up, and then maybe Miguel was at 10 months, Santi was at 17 months, they start walking. Why are we patient with that really long process that takes from 12 to 17 months? Because we understand the process. So why aren't we patient when it comes to emotional development? Let's go back. Your toddler, your 2-year-old, throws a tantrum, has a tantrum, and you respond gently. And then 2 minutes later, they have the same tantrum. And then you're like, but I already taught them gentle hands and they keep hitting me. And if we go back to this first example, is because, again, like if we understood the brain development of our children, the maturity development, we for sure would be more patient. Mm-hmm. If we knew that, okay, Yes, she keeps hitting because her brain is not developed yet. She's not there yet, right? She's not sharing, not because she's possessive or bossy, but she's not there yet. She's 2.5, right?
Yeah.
Or she's demanding because that's 4-year-olds, 4 to 6. That's a very common developmentally appropriate, healthy behavior for preschoolers and kindergarteners when they become really demanding, even telling you what to do. Don't sit there. Don't look at that thing. Why are you doing that? Like, that's a very developmentally appropriate thing. But our lack of patience, from my opinion, comes from the lack of understanding of those processes. When we are patient with our children's physical development, because we understand it takes time for them to go from not walking to walking. Mm-hmm. But what about if we knew that it takes time for them to go from reacting, hitting, kicking, screaming, to communicating their needs maturely? And you know what? It's not going to take them 5 years or not even 12 years. It will take them until adulthood, until their brain is fully developed, to have a fully functioning brain and not react that way. I highly encourage you to dig in to parenting with understanding and learn about your child's physical, emotional, psychological needs and what is expected at each developmental stage. That will help you be so much more patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to answer one more question. This one comes from Jerica. And this is actually a question that I get a lot because I only have one kiddo. So a lot of parents want to know. Some parents say, you only have one kid. Call me when you have more, But Jerica is genuinely curious. And she's saying, I'm a mama of 2, and I'm trying my best to gently parent, but sometimes I get so overwhelmed. So I kind of want to pass this over to you, Marcela, because you are a mom of multiples. You have twins, and you have had more than that in your home at certain points whenever you were doing therapeutic foster care providing. So what advice would you give the parent of multiples who's trying to do this, but just feels so overwhelmed?
Okay. A long time ago, when I used to do one-on-one consultations, that was a consultation from a mom of 4 kids. And the 4 kids were neurodivergent. So they had higher needs.
Yeah.
So she said, but it's just so hard when everybody's literally needing and dysregulate at the same time. What do? I'm like, okay, in that case, I lived it. I lived it. I had little twins. One of them, I don't know if Santi is neurodivergent, but he has sensory needs. But I had little twins, and then I have a neurodivergent teen, and that happened to me, that the 3 of them needed attention at the same time. And I'm alone. Let's just say I'm alone. My husband is not there, right? The first thing is it safe? Is it safe what you're doing? Is it safe what you're doing? Is it safe what you're doing? I'm pointing to each child like, okay, Santi's crying, but he's in the crib. He's safe. Okay. Miguel is crying as well, but Miguel is climbing on that window. Okay, I'm going to take him down so safety first. Mm-hmm. I know it looks like really overwhelming and like you almost want to have like an octopus, be an octopus and have multiple hands to reach all of them at the same time, but you cannot. So I would focus on the one whose safety is compromised first and bring him back to safety, right? And then I will go one by one. Usually the one that needed to wait a little bit more was my teenager because he could wait a little bit more. Could you please, Santi's climbing on the chair. I know, I want to help you too, but I'm going to get Santi down and I'm going to be with you. Yeah. Even if they're like screaming or slamming the door, because that he was a door slammer. He would slam the door a lot. He slammed the door, but he's still safe in his room. So yeah. He can't wait until I get Santi down. And after that, I will go and help my teenager who was having a rough time.
Mm-hmm. What would you do with your twins right now being at the same age? And you were probably, they've always been at the same age. So in those moments, whenever you've got like Okay, one is not in that place where I can say, I need you to give me a minute. Like, what if you're trying to talk to one and the other one's just like, bah, 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 I need you too. You're giving him the attention you're doing, like, how does that work?
Let's just say now that they're 6 years old, it happens a lot. If I'm trying to help one, the other one is on top of me. It's been very few times that both of them are as dysregulated. There is always one that is more regulated than the other. Mm-hmm. So the one that is more regulated, I invite them to help me out.
Okay.
Right? So, for example, let's just say Santi's crying in his calm down corner and I'm trying to help them. And Miguel is like, Mommy, look, I'm going to show you something. But he's really like, don't put your attention there. Look at me. I'm like, Miguel, Santi is going through something. How can we help him? So I invited to help me with Santi. Mm-hmm. That's one way. Another way that I give the one who's the most regulated, I give them an instruction. So for example, one time Santi was chasing Miguel to hit him because Miguel was playing the flute and Santi's sensory he was very triggered. And then I said, okay, we need a break. Miguel, Santi needs a break, and I think you need a break. Miguel was the most regulated one. And then he said, okay. So he went to his bedroom and he took a break and I focused on Santi. Or if it's vice versa, I do it. I mean, I always look who is the one who's most regulated and I focus more on the one who needs the most co-regulation at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that alone, I think can be so helpful for our listeners. I think that they're like, oh, okay, I don't have to meet both of their needs right at that very moment. I can say, okay, this one over here is a little less regulated. It's more, this child is more dysregulated. So I can invite the child who's more regulated into the process, or I can just say, hey, can you give me just a minute and I'll come help you in a second. And their brain's not as dysregulated. So you're able to help them. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
That's what I usually do. There has been a few times that both of them are like, ah! So again, I assess who is throwing things. Okay, that one is not safe. Let me focus on safety. Mm-hmm. It's just tough because we as parents, we see them both needing things and we want to meet their needs at the same time. Yeah. And sometimes it's not possible. Even when they were newborns, they would be both crying with poopy diapers and I still had two hands and I could change one at a time.
Yeah. 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 That's a perfect example. Well, I thought this was really great today. I hope that you guys were encouraged by the answers that you got. And even if you didn't get your specific question answered, hopefully you got something out of the answers that we gave and you can take a little nugget away and apply it to your parenting immediately. We do want to remind you that you can leave a review on this podcast episode if you found this helpful. This is a way to encourage other parents to listen to the podcast. We love whenever you share the podcast as well. You can tag us on Instagram and TikTok. Both of those are at High Impact Club and at The Considerate Mama. If you are a customer of ours, meaning you have any product within High Impact Club or HIC Parenting, as we are now calling it, you can become part of our Cycle Breaker group on Facebook. It's the HIC Cycle Breaker group. These are linked below in the podcast description. And as always, it only takes understanding to break your cycle. We will see you next week. Bye.